Hey Soul Center, you're probably thinking, wait, this is not Danny Fake. Who is this interloper? My name is Laura Neff, and Danny, I am lucky to be dear friends with Danny Fake, and she is at my house right now in Charlotte, North Carolina. So today is her third Soul Center Facebook Live around parts of self and self-compassion. So we thought it would be fun if I held the camera to give her weary arms some rest. And also, I might pop in on the very end. So, without further ado, here's the woman you've all been waiting for, Danny Fake,
oh my God,
talking about the authentic self, week number 3. Here we go.
Wow, I've never actually had an introduction on my Facebook Lives before. Thank you, Laura. So, hey everybody, as promised, this is the third Monday in April where we are talking about the authentic self. So, as a recap, if you have not seen the previous 2 weeks worth of videos, first week we talked about the concept of parts of self. So that's identifying who are the people on your bus and who's in the driver's seat when you want them to be and maybe when you don't want them to be. Second week, we talked about self-compassion. So we looked at what self-compassion is and isn't, how it differs from self-care. And the most important point I hope you all got from that is that self-compassion is not about doing anything. You're not actually doing anything with self-compassion. Self-compassion is a way that you be with your parts of self. Right? As a reminder, I feel like I said this 47 times last week, but the definition of self-compassion is the gentle, nurturing energy that you offer to your parts of self. Stepping forward into this week, we want to talk about the authentic self because if you think about all the people on your bus, not all of them are capable of offering self-compassion. And in fact, I would argue if you're going to do this work or play around with this concept, that it's important to identify the part of you that has the most capacity to offer that gentle, nurturing energy, to offer that self-compassion, and that is the authentic self. The number one question that I get from people is how, right? You hear that doing energy? How? How do I connect with my authentic self? How do I offer self-compassion? So you're not going to get a direct answer to that because there really isn't a direct answer to the how because it is a being. But what I do want to offer in today's session is looking at a way that you can use your body to know when you are most capable of connecting with that authentic self. So let me give you an example. The authentic self comes from a concept from IFS, Internal Family Systems Therapy, and that was Dick Schwartz put that together. And I said put it together. He did a whole lot of research around it. The idea is there are 9 different C words. There's no way I'm going to remember all of them. But the way that you can know if you're connected to that authentic self is, are you feeling calm? You can help me here, Laura. Connected, curious,
Compassionate.
Compassionate, creative, centered. Right? If you really want to know all 9 words, I can let you know. But you get the sense, yeah, clear, courageous. It's that part where you're feeling centered and calm. Another way to think of it is, when do you have a sense of well-being? And the reason I want to tie it into your body is because some people, particularly if you've lived your whole life identified with the primary part, it can be difficult to get that separation and to really find that true, connected, authentic self. Some of you may be going, yep, I think I get it. I know what you're talking about. And just as a way of validation, others of you may be going, I have no idea what you mean when you say authentic self. So don't worry about that if you fall more towards that end of the spectrum, because we're going to look at how you can use your body. So what I want you all to do is to think about a place or an experience in your life where you feel a sense of well-being. So it maybe it's a room in your house that you love, that brings you a great sense of joy and centeredness and connectedness. Maybe it's being out in nature, being by the ocean or being with the trees or in the mountains. Maybe it's with a person or with a pet if you're with a particular animal. So any kind of a circumstance or experience where you feel that genuine sense of well-being. And then what you'll do after we end this video, or when you have the time to do this, is just close your eyes and take yourself to that place with that person, with that animal, and slowly walk yourself through your 5 senses. So in that place, what are you seeing? What are you hearing? What are you smelling? Are there any tastes that are associated? What do you feel? Do you feel warmth or a breeze? Or what are you feeling with that sense of touch? What you're doing by identifying a visual place of well-being and tying in your five senses is you're allowing your nervous system, your actual body, to align with what it feels like to be connected to your authentic self. Right? So those of you who are thinking, I don't know that I understand it in like cognitively, like authentic self, that means nothing to me, or even if you do know, it's always connected to the body. And so if you can use your body to help you find that calm, centered place, that's the start, because it's from that place that you can offer self-compassion. Right? I would love to hear any comments or questions that you may have in the comment sections about this to clarify it. Next week, I'm going to be talking about how to tie all this together. So great, I understand parts, I understand self-compassion, I understand the authentic self. What do I do with all of that? So we'll talk about just a process of how you can use this all together. So to close us out for today, I want to flip the question back to Laura and just ask, when do you know when you have that connection to your authentic self? Like, do you have an example of what that feels like or can be like for you?
Okay, hi again, everybody. And first of all, don't we all love the chickens and the cats and the dogs that were running around behind Danny the whole time? So this morning, Danny and I went to an appointment, and she went in for the appointment, and it happened to be at someone's home, and I got to hang out for an hour. And so as I was contemplating, like, what do I want to do for this hour, the person whose home we were at, she had the new book called The Book of Joy.
Yeah.
With the Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu, who were interviewed together for a whole week about their relationship and about what it is to be human and to cultivate joy. So I've been hearing about this book, and I wanted to read it, and she had it right there, and she's like, here, you want to take my book? I'm like, yeah, I want to see this book. And she lives right on this stunning little lake outside of Charlotte. And so I went down to her dock. She lives right in the lake. She has a dock. She has a paddleboard, a stand-up paddleboard that's tethered to the dock, and it was kind of bumped up against the dock. And so I'm sitting there in the sun, this beautiful setting, and I start reading this book, but I kept getting distracted by the beautiful trees and the birds and the wind and the sun and the water. And definitely one of my access points for my authentic self is to be in nature. But I was hijacked. I kept getting hijacked by this part of me that was like, you should read this book. This is your opportunity to read this book. You don't have it. You want to be able to go back in there and talk to her about this book and how wonderful it is, and you want her to think you're smart. And so this part just kept like driving me to read. And then I would be reading and I'd be like, oh, it's so nice out here. And then, oh, no, I have to read. I've got to read this book. And so it went on, and after like 15 minutes, and finally I just said, this is crazy. And so thankfully the part of me that is so in tune with nature took the wheel, and I put the book down, and I got off the deck and climbed onto her paddleboard, which was still tethered to the dock, and I just laid down. And for 45 minutes I just floated in the water, and I watched the trees, and I listened to the birds, and there would be airplanes that would go by, and I would work with the part of me that wanted them to go away, and I would just be like, it's okay, like all those people are someplace, they're going someplace, and they're probably happy that the airplane's taking off, and it's all fine. And so it was just such a distinct difference. Danny and I were talking about it later, and it was such a distinct difference between the part of me that is so soul-fed by being in nature, and my authentic self is the only one in me who really will truly allow this doing human to relax and to thoroughly 100% enjoy and be in that space.
So she wasn't expecting this part of it, but what I want to say to that is that doing being, she was able to bypass that by connecting to her authentic self and just be. When you laid on that paddleboard, you weren't doing anything. You were just being, just awesome. Being.
And that's not my norm.
Right? It was awesome, and she was recharged, and she was happy. There was an energy to her that came from that. So it was a beautiful practice of self-compassion by being able to connect to that authentic self.
Yeah. And I got so much. I think part of it that tipped it for me was that all of a sudden I was like, I'm going to get so much more out of this time, which is ironic because the part that had hijacked me kept trying to have me convinced that I would get more out of it if I just read this book. But I knew in my soul, like, it was like coming home to just being in nature. Like, I knew I would get more out of that if I just allowed myself to be in my authentic skin and soak up the sun.
So let's leave you with that question. What for you causes you to have that feeling of coming home?